here. All right, Mr. Burchett, it's been a conversation I know you've been talking about quite lately. I just want to first off kind of tell me how this interest started with you.
Well, at a very young age, my parents encouraged me to read a lot. And, I guess nowadays you let your kid ride his bicycle over a mile away from the house to the library, they'd probably arrest you. But back then it was pretty cool growing up in West Hills. We'd drive right across Kingston Pike to a little public library, and they had on the table, it was just set up a bunch of books, and there was all this wild stuff, and there was something on UFOs, and I picked one up and just started reading about it. We've had a history of them in this country since, 1947 was an incident that happened in Roswell, New Mexico. The military intelligence issued a press release that said we've recovered a saucer, and then the next day they came out and said no, in fact it was a hot air balloon. And military intelligence is a whole lot like congressional ethics. It really doesn't exist. But to think that they made that big of a blunder is suspect to me. Why wouldn't they just say, oh, it was a wrecked airplane ran into a tractor, some drunk farmer found it or something and made this claim. It's just, and there's just been time and time again. Now we have Navy pilots, the best in the world, that are coming forward and saying in fact, we've had 14, I believe, documented near miss incidents in the air. These are the best trained pilots in the world, the best in the world, riding around in a $50 million aircraft. And now they're bringing forth footage, these Tic Tac videos, not TikTok like the Chinese communist propaganda that's invading all of our phones, but it's Tic Tac, like the candy. And these pilots are literally following these craft, and they go underwater and they come out and they have no heat trail. You got to ask yourself, why would they lie about it? They are, when they make these reports, they're brought off the flight line, and they're made to, they say they're debriefed, but they're really interrogated for 8 hours. I've literally had pilots tell me in a setting that they've destroyed the video because they don't want to be interrogated. They don't want to lose their spot on the line, and it's not going to go anywhere anyway. And they don't want to blemish on their record. And we've just seen this time and time again. And these are decorated veterans. It doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot up here in Washington, but back in Tennessee, it means a lot that a decorated veteran comes forth. And why would they want to wreck their career? Look, all I want is transparency. I think that's what you all in the media are always after, transparency. Let's get to the bottom of it. Quit sending us these redacted files. Let the American people see what they show us in private. And it's time to get this out in the open. And we're going to have professionals. It's going to be a real hearing. We're not going to bring in a flying saucer, a little green man talking about getting probed by somebody. This is going to be the real deal. And now you're seeing the Pentagon seeing that the American public is showing some interest, and over half the American public believes in something else out there. And now the Pentagon is looking for money, and they'll ask for a few $1 billion to study it. And we don't need to give them any more money. They lose over $1 billion a year in their audits. They have not passed an audit in the history of auditing the Pentagon. You can't name me another institution up here that literally loses over $1 billion. Department of Defense, 60% of their assets are unaccounted for. If that was a business, or they'd be in jail, and they should be. And so I just want the files, turn loose of the files, the unredacted files, the photographs, the film. Let the American public see it. Let them see some of the things that I've seen in private, and let them make up their own mind.
You were quoted, I think, talking to maybe one of the networks, I think it was a week or so ago, saying something to the effect of, you have seen video that I think is classified at this point, that you said, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the American public is not ready to see yet.
I was being facetious. That's what they think. That's their arrogance, that the American public is not ready to see this stuff. But I think Tim Burchett thinks dadgummit, the American public needs to see this stuff, and they need to see more of it. This should open the floodgates, and I believe it will.
I know you're very good at speaking candidly, and I'm curious if you do so here. What are we talking about in terms of what we're seeing, what you have seen with your own two eyes in terms of being a part of these groups and there in DC? What kind of footage are you seeing with your own eyes that you think more people need to see?
Well, it's funny. I've seen some things pretty incredible. I've had people literally come to my house that were afraid of retaliation to show me things. But it's what I haven't seen. You know, I went down to Florida. I was supposed to be briefed. Representative Luna and Representative Gates, who are both from Florida, you're supposed to be briefed down there at the base in a skiff, a secure thing. You gotta take your cell phones off. You can't take a Fitbit. I don't wear a Fitbit. You can't take any electronic devices in for fear of recording or whatever, or some sort of sabotage. It's exactly like when you go see the president of the United States. You put everything and lock it in a locker, and you keep the key. And we were told we were going to all this stuff we were going to see, and we're going to talk to these pilots. Well, we get down there in this meeting, and we look at the synopsis of the meeting, and there's nothing over what they said they were. And here I am flying down there. I take 2 days out of my life. I don't have much time off from up here, and they're playing this stupid game with us. The general is, and they tell us that we don't have the clearance to see that. And brother, we've got the highest clearances there are. If it's out there, I'm supposed to pretty much be able to see it. And we were told we were going to talk to pilots. We were going to see footage. We were going to see all this stuff. Well, the pilots come in. I mean, they turn us away. The general sends us up to his office, and we call DC, and we make sure that the top brass understands what the heck's going on. They bring us a nice fruit tray, and it's funny because they had microphones under the table. I mean, this is really Bush League. And we unplugged their microphones for them. And then they brought us this fruit tray. And then we go, then we made a few phone calls, and lo and behold, they said, we want you back down there. And the general, he's got to leave. He's got to go somewhere. And so they bring in these pilots. And there's 3 or 4 of them, I can't remember now, and you had Secret Service in the room and others. And the Secret Service was getting very nervous. And the pilots would explain, the pilots described craft that they've tailed and seen that did not match anything of any of our enemies or allies in the entire world. Now we've got footage of them doing things that defy all the laws of physics. And so at some point, they're going to have to come forth with some of this stuff. And you had pilots tell me that some of these pilots have told me how they destroy the footage, because when they come back to base, they're interrogated 8 hours. And so it's just it's a cat and mouse game. And you've got a really compartmentalized government that has passed some of this information on to business. And here we are trying to have these hearings. And NASA, we've called NASA in, and guess what? This week they backed out. We had a witness tell us they couldn't come because they were getting pressure from the Pentagon. Now, either they exist or they don't exist. I put an amendment in on the FAA reauthorization that said that if a commercial pilot comes across something that they can identify in the air, they are is supposed to report, and the footage is supposed to be reported to Congress. The Intelligence Committee blocked that bill. And we were told the intelligence community, and I'm not, it's the industrial war complex, these war pimps that we have up here in Washington, they want to control everything and anything that has to do with the dollar. And so we're just going to keep pushing.
Let me ask you this, from the videos that you have seen, from the stories you have heard from people up in the sky, if that footage, if what people were telling you, if those videos come to light publicly for the American people to see, what do you think people's reaction would be to it?
I hope they're angry that the American, or that this government, and it's both parties. And I hope they're angry that they hid this from them, because you got to imagine if there's an energy source that these things are traveling and the speeds that they are achieving, and they're not showing a heat source. So you got to imagine if there's some sort of energy source that they could do this out in if society had a hold of. Imagine we wouldn't be having all these wars in the Middle East, because guess what? We wouldn't need the oil. We wouldn't need all this, these government programs. We wouldn't need all these people, these jobs that they're creating. We wouldn't be destroying the environment to dig up stuff. We could power the world. It's Tesla's dream, and so I would hope that at some point we get to that point where we trust the American public, because that's really, it's about trust, it's about corruption, it's about greed, and all those things are really what runs this government.
Yeah,
they don't trust us, we don't trust them for good reason, and the corruption of controlling this stuff is beyond belief.
I know you said you've been frustrated with what you haven't seen. If you could be candid with us, what have you seen that maybe we have not? I don't know how much detail you're able to go into.
I just say that I've seen some things that as they were explained to me. I was asking them how that our pilots couldn't keep up with. I'll just leave it at that. There's things that I've seen that if it was an American, if it was a pilot inside of that, they'd be dead. They couldn't withstand the G's, and they couldn't withstand the pressure, and the ability to make those turns and without a heat signature, to me, is that's beyond belief.
You think people would be surprised to see videos that you've seen, to hear stories that you've?
I think they would, brother. I really do. I think they would. But there's going to be more and more of that leaking out, and this AI, I question a lot of it now. So so that's why I want to get these literally war heroes in here to talk and to tell their side of the story, because I believe the spoken word is going to be a lot more valuable than some cheap video that somebody films with a cell phone. Which, by the way, with all the footage we have, the people that were briefing the intelligence committee from the Pentagon, they couldn't even spell UFO. They were a joke. They showed a footage of to me, it was one of those metallic type hot air balloons that somebody let go, and they filmed it with a cell phone, and they couldn't even stop a 20-second video. And we're like a bunch of seals out there, just and Pavlov's dog, and they're all, oh, okay. They just took their word for it. They didn't show, and we had one of the pilots who was involved in one of the well-documented chases in the audience, but was not allowed. He wasn't even supposed to be in there. Somebody gave him their press credentials to get in, and he wasn't even allowed to testify. And it was a meeting that was open to the public. And I was told I was going to get to ask a question. I'm a United States congressman, for goodness sakes. And I eased on over to the podium about the time to ask the question. And I got a text that said, Burchett, you can't ask any questions. And it was all staged, and the taxpayers got hosed once again.
Let me ask you this, and I don't want to keep you much longer, and thank you for the time again. From your best perspective, and I know you've hinted at it a couple times through this conversation, but why is it you think that there is footage, there are, firsthand accounts that we don't know about? Why do you think this is not being publicly shared?
Yeah, because the arrogance, and if it's been reversed engineered, then why are they not releasing that to the general public to make our lives better? And I submit to you, go back to the greed issue, and control and arrogance. Again, the Kennedy assassination's over 50 years ago, yet the presidents of the United States repeatedly have refused to release those files. Nobody's even alive that's in those files. The ones I've seen, you know, so redacted, just a big old piece of Swiss cheese is what it looks like.
Congressman, I'll end with this question just to make sure we're on the same page and we're not mincing any words. From what you've seen,
oh, sorry, dude. Somehow I got muted. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. I saw you put the finger up and I couldn't hear you, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I'll wait.
it wasn't the middle finger; it was the pointing finger.
Sure.
For the record,
There could be worse. And we'll end with this question. Thank you for the time again. But just to be clear, are you saying what you have seen? Do you think it's something, you know, international technology we haven't seen, or do you believe that you have seen videos of extraterrestrial life forms and UFOs?
I'm 100% convinced that is not any of our allies or any of our enemies' aircraft, that it did not come from this world. Either it's from our skunk works, which means it was something they recovered and they reverse engineered, or it is something extraterrestrial. I'm convinced there's no other explanation, because if it's the Russians, they wouldn't be battling in Ukraine. It's China, they would control us.
Gotcha. Did I miss? I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart right now. Is there anything else?
No, it's not really near and dear to my heart. It just, I didn't create it. I mean, I didn't ask for it. It kind of just fell in my lap. And then the chairman said, well, we're putting Burchett in charge of that, you know, because he'd heard me talk about it. So, and he's a buddy of mine, and the speaker's kind to me. And honestly, they've confided in me. They'd like to get to the bottom of it as well.
Sure. Do you think we'll ever see it? Videos like that? Do you think there's a timeline that you could feel comfortable saying?
I think what's going to happen is somebody's going to leak something out, and I hope that they get it to you all and it gets out quick, because, you know, here I am, the 435th most powerful member of Congress, and I'm trying to have a hearing, and people are telling me they can't testify because they are receiving pressure from the Pentagon, and the intelligence community kills my amendments. So I think we're over the target, and they know it. And they're just trying to hold the flood back right now. They want to control this thing. And if what I think is getting ready to happen happens, then I don't, you know, disappear or something crazy. Just kidding. No, but if I think from my sources, they tell me people are wanting to come forward, and this could really open the floodgates.
Gotcha. Congressman, I'm questioned out. Unless you got anything else to add, I'll let you wrap at that.
No, I just don't make me look like a complete idiot. There's a lot of people, a lot of educated people that really have contacted me that think something's going on. So thank you. Thank you for asking real good questions, brother. They've been excellent, actually. So out of anybody that I've had, you've been one at the top. So thank you.
I appreciate that. You work